on, guys? Welcome to the first episode of Canadian Beef. This is the podcast where me and my co-host Paul are going to be talking about some cool fitness stuff. What's going on, Paul?
What's going on, Robin? It's going to be exciting, man. I'm really excited for this.
Yeah, me too. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Still haven't trained. A little bit scatterbrained because I'm, 3 weeks out from a show. So you know how it is when you're lean and you're eating like low cal. It's brutal.
So you just came off a show, right? So how did you do, and where's your mind right now going into the next one?
Yeah, well, I just came back from Niagara, and it went, it went fairly well, all considering, but I was holding a lot of water. So my mind right now is at a place like where I know I can improve on that package and I know the steps I need to take. So I'm in a good place. I think this year I'm more positive than I have been the past couple years. Yeah, have you been there when you're competing? And we're going to talk about the psychology of bodybuilding today, right? So this is a big piece of what we're going to be talking about. But when you're competing, like your mind is a mess, especially like peak week or those last 4 or 5 weeks. You get yourself into this bubble where you're just battling yourself, right? But I think there's a confidence piece that comes with it. So like if you're not overly concerned and everything's falling in place, like even if things like you spilling over, you're holding water happen, it's a little stressful. But like if you have a strategy to like, you know, handle it or mitigate the problems, then you feel a lot better. So man, I'm in a good place for the next one. At least I know where I'm going.
Yeah, I know. Like for myself, because I just competed in the Puerto Rico Pro. It was 6 weeks ago already, and
Yeah.
it's like crazy, like how fast time flies. But I've been doing some thinking just about how the whole experience was. Like I, over the course of the 6 weeks post show, I've been reflecting on the experiences from that show, and I got an 8th place. And I at first was like really disappointed with myself, kind of like, oh man, like where did I screw up? But then afterwards, after the prejudging, I was really down on myself. But after the finals, I was really like on a high because I looked at how much progress I made. And at the end of the day, I mean, that's what bodybuilding really is. So getting a placing is a really awesome thing to kind of get that validation that, yeah, you did so good, you got a top call out or whatever. But at the same time, it's like my last showing, I was 10th place, and this year I was 8th place. Maybe not the biggest jump in placings, but my overall physique improved dramatically. I was 12 pounds heavier and I was in really good shape. So I was really happy with that. But it's so easy to get down on yourself when you don't win. But at the end of the day, like there's only one winner. And you have to look at it like, hey, how much progress did I make from the last time I got on stage to this point? And so, yeah, after doing a lot of reflection, I'm in a good place right now myself. And I'm like, I would really love to compete again. But at the same time, my goal now is to win pro bodybuilding show. So in order to do that, I'm taking the judges' feedback, which is just to get bigger, get a better, thicker back, and then come back with that level of conditioning and fullness that I had in the finals and actually go for a win. And at the end of the day, that's what it's all about is getting that win and improving. It's both, right? It's not only do you want to improve the most, but you still want to get that win, right?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I want to start by saying I saw you in Toronto before going to Niagara. What, last week, right? Was it last week?
Yeah.
And you look great, man. Like you've made so many improvements over the season, and you're competitive going into competitive season, coming out of it. And when I saw you, I was like mind blown because you've got the size, but you really like dialed it in, right? So I think you're going like exactly in the right direction. So just to toot your horn, man. But I was really impressed when I saw you, and you're massive, right? So you've got that size.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that. Yeah, it's hard. I mean, bodybuilding is one of those sports where no matter what level you are, you're always going to be your worst critic. Actually, this is an interesting thing because I was talking to Jamie the Giant, Joe Hall, and I was talking to Akeem Williams backstage at the Puerto Rico, And Jamie said to Akeem, he said, Akeem, you're at that level now where you're winning shows and you're going to the Olympia, 6th place at the Olympia last year. You must have so much confidence, and you must be at that level where you don't really have any doubts. You don't really have any of this like negative self-talk. And Akeem was like, well, I don't know, man. And I kind of just jumped in and I said, you know what I think? And maybe Akeem can either confirm or deny, but I think once you get to a higher level, it doesn't get easier. It actually gets harder, and you just get better at dealing with that pressure and stress. And that's either going to propel you to the top and keep you at the top, or it's going to like make you crumble, right? And Akeem was like, yeah, 100%.
For sure, man. The bigger they come, the harder they fall, right?
Right.
And it's like getting to the top of the mountain. I think Ian Valliere is like the prime example, because we saw him struggle with things last year. Actually, I was hosting a podcast at the time where Ian came on, and it was right around the time of the New York Pro. And the New York Pro was like validation for him. But Ian's one of these guys, and I think, and I want to talk about intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation today. Like, what motivates us to do better? And I think the common ground between all of the pro bodybuilders and good bodybuilders, even amateur bodybuilders who keep competing, is that they're critical of themselves, right? And they're competing for themselves. You're not competing always for first place. You are competing for sure for first place, right? But you're competing to be a better you, and you have like this self perception. And it's like Ian, for sure, he needed validation for himself. He didn't need to be validated by other people. But I see that in him. He always needs to validate his own opinion, like his own beliefs. So I think that pushes you harder every day to be better and to be better. And that's something like that doesn't come with, having an ego. Because if you have an ego and you think you're the best and your shit doesn't stink, and, I can think of pro bodybuilders, the exception is like a Phil Heath, right? That'll come in there and just dominate. Yeah. Or maybe like a Ronnie Coleman, but Ronnie Coleman didn't have much of an ego. So I think that's a big factor, to be self-critical, right?
Yeah. Yeah, when you're talking about like extrinsic versus intrinsic motivation, I think it's never like one or the other. Because I being a Libra, I always look at things as a balance. So I always find like with most things in life, it's not like one way or the other. It's like somewhere in between. So people say like you have to be like internally motivated, 100%. You got to be. But I think it's a combination of things. Like, yes, that is for sure like the prerequisite. You have to be internally motivated in order to do the things that you have to do as a bodybuilder day in and day out. But there's going to be those times where you need someone just to pick you up, and whether that's like a partner, a training partner, or like a romantic partner, or whether that's a coach, or whether that's anybody in your corner. But it's really a team effort. So you do need sometimes someone that will say, hey man, like fucking stop saying these bad things about yourself, or just, hey, shut up, go back to work, or hey, you know what, you need to work harder, or whatever it is you need to hear. And I think there's a huge value in having people around you that understand. They don't need to understand psychology, but they need to understand like what puts you as an individual into the zone. And it might be one word, it might be one sentence, it could be like you need to sit down and talk to them for an hour to get them into the zone. I don't know what that is for you, but for me, sometimes it's just like, I want to see how far you can take this set right now. And sometimes I'll say that to myself. It's like, you know what, I'm here right now. This is the only thing that matters, this set right now. And I want to see how far I can take it. I want to live here in this pain right now and see how long I can live here. And sometimes that's what I need to get myself into the zone, right? But sometimes that's something that I'll say to myself, or sometimes it's something that a training partner or a coach or whoever will say to me. And so I think that if you want to be like the best in your sport, even if it's bodybuilding or whether it's basketball or whatever, having someone that understands your psychology is like extremely valuable. And then we can also get into things like hypnosis and things like that, which are kind of like woo-woo, but I really believe in them. What do you think about that kind of stuff?
Well, hokey, it's the hokey, like shit, like hypnosis and then, meditation. But it's not that hokey, because like if you really look at physics and neuroscience, that shit is grounded in evidence. Like if you can get into a Zen mindset, that's going to affect you. But going back on the support system thing, man, I think, I was talking about good bodybuilders and a common element between all of them. And you're right. Like I think every good bodybuilder has had a good support system,
Mhm.
other than maybe Dorian Yates, who, from what I hear, like trained in the shadows. But who knows? Maybe he did have a good support system we didn't know. But everybody needs like someone that'll help them like move through things. But when I'm talking about like external factors, not in.
Everybody has somebody. Even if they don't admit it, everybody has somebody. Like Ronnie had somebody, Ian has somebody, Dorian, he had somebody. I don't know who it was, but he had somebody. I think everybody needs at least one person that can kind of like be there for them, right? When they need it.
Yeah, and that's the difference between, winning a show and losing a show sometimes.
Yeah.
Like when you have, I know, this season I'm pretty zen, but uh, I found a lot of negativity with, people I was talking to a lot. And, my friend who was helping me with my show, was pointing out a lot of flaws all the time. So, sometimes it's good for your training partner to be critical on you, but
Yep.
sometimes it's not a benefit, when you're in that mind state, especially when you're so close to show. You need honesty.
Yeah.
You also need someone to be diplomatic about it.
Yeah.
And that's part of a support system. Like they have to walk that line where they can be honest with you and tell you what's going on and what they think you need work on. But they also need to be, there for you and like address it properly.
That's right. Yeah. So there's a good story with my Puerto Rico prep. So I went to Tampa and I was training at MI40 for the last 5 weeks.
Oh, nice.
And so, yeah, so I was there with Ben. Ben was like, he was doing like a bunch of other stuff. So I ended up training with him maybe like once a week. But each week he would give me like one thing, like you got to do this. And then when I see you next week, make sure you've done it. So I think the first week it was like, I want you to do like 20 minutes of yoga every day. And I'm like, okay, fine, I'll do it. And so every morning I would get there at 6 a.m. I would do my 20 minutes of yoga. And then I would do that before I started the workout every day. Okay. Then the next week it was like, I want you to do 40 minutes of posing after your workout. And that was the one that really got me. And this is the story that I wanted to get to, is because Sarah was there with me. And so there's the posing room. And so every day after we finish training, we go to the posing room and 40 minutes. So she would have the timer and I would start my posing. So front relaxed. And she would have the timer. And every time I relaxed, like if I actually like physically stopped posing, she would turn the timer off. And then she wouldn't turn it back on until I started posing again. So it was like 40 minutes. And I remember that it was probably like 12 or 10 days out where I was like really hating that posing. I was like, I really don't want to do this. And so I was telling her, I was like, I do not want to pose today. And she's like, well, you have to. Ben said you have to. And I'm not going to let you not pose. And I was like getting mad at her. I'm like, I didn't say it, but I was like, I was really getting upset. I was like, just like fuming. And I would just sit there like, I don't want to do this. And I would just waste time and I would procrastinate because I really didn't want to do. So I was sitting there for like 30 minutes and I really didn't want to do it. And I was getting in my head. I'm like, it's so painful to pose for 40 minutes. I don't want to do it. But the incredible thing about it was that when I got on stage and I got brought out for the finals, I was brought out in the third call out, and I worked my way into the center of the third call out, and I was brought back to the side. Then I was brought out with the second call out right after that, worked my way into the center, and then I was brought out with the first call out back to back. And I was like, and I was going through like that pain. I was like, because of the fact that I did that, and because of the fact that I had those people there telling me to do that, I was able to then pose for however long I was required to on stage. And I just kept getting better. And I was like feeding off that energy. I was like, I did that. I'm here now. That's why I did this. And it was like amazing, right? So
yeah, it's fun. We're our own worst. Like, sounds like you were being your own worst enemy there.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's the difference, like between, again, winning and losing, like getting out of that mindset. I saw your video. you posted a YouTube video about positive mindset. YouTube, no, it was Instagram, like an Instagram clip.
Yep.
But it makes sense, right? Like, I mean, you've got to focus on the positive and not just so much like what you don't want to do. So you found a way out of that, right?
Yeah.
And but it's funny because when you have a good support system, they tell you things. Like, you have a good coach and they tell you, they give you, like you were talking about Pekulski giving you a bucket list of things to do.
Mm-hmm.
And the best coaches I've ever had, actually Ian being a really good coach that I had a long time ago, he always made sure to give us homework. Like, he didn't say it's your homework, right? But we always took home like things, and then he'd make you go over like what you were eating, what you were going to be training, what your split looked like. You know, he'd reiterate it and make you recap. And I think a good coach does that.
Yeah.
Because it makes you self-reflective. It's like you do ART and different types of treatment too, right?
Yep.
Myofascial stuff, stretching.
Absolutely. And hey, you know, like as a coach, I've been coaching now since 2018 when I turned pro, when I really started taking, you know, on clients online and in person. And over the years, like I was very, very basic when I first started. Like, here's your plan, just give me pictures and wait. And over these years, I've added things to my check-ins. Now I have an entire Excel sheet, and it's like, I want you to tell me how many days out of 7 did you practice a meditation? How many days out of 7 did you go for a walk? How many days out of 7 did you have a breathing practice, a mindful breathing practice? How was your energy levels on a scale from 1 to 10? Tell me about that. You know, how could you improve that? And it's like, I have like 25 things that I'm asking people every week. And it tells me right away, how serious is this person? Because I have some clients, they just leave stuff blank. It's like, I just ignore that. Like, measurements for my arms, measurements for my legs, measurements for my waist. It'll just be like NA, not applicable. Like, what are you talking about? It's not applicable. Of course it is. This is literally
bodybuilding
we're looking at here, right? Or it's like blood pressure, blood sugar. It's like, do I have to get a blood pressure monitor for that? Yes, of course you need a blood pressure monitor for that. What are you talking about? These are important things. But like years ago, I wouldn't have really thought about that, right? And now it's like, and now I understand how important these things are. Maybe even more important than the actual program itself, right? Yeah. A lot of the times, like even for myself, honestly, just completely being honest, a lot of that stuff I would not do if I was only coaching myself. That's why I like having a coach, because it's having that external motivation of someone like, hey, Robin, I want you to do this and this and this. I want you to measure your blood sugar. This is what Dorian said the other day. He's like, okay, you're at that point now where you're coming off of the rebound of your show. I want you to measure your blood sugar before every single meal. I would never do that on my own. I would maybe do it once a day in the morning, but for every meal, it's a lot. You know,
sounds pretty meticulous.
Yeah, so now I've got my blood glucose monitor in my bag, and I'm measuring it before every meal so I can report back to him. But I think that's the importance of a coach, and that is the importance of having that external motivation, because it's going to push you to do things that are a little bit more uncomfortable than you'd want to allow yourself to do originally, like on your own.
Yeah, I remember having a chat with Patrick Tour, the new guru, right? But what impressed me about Patrick is he's a no bullshit kind of guy. And you know, if his clients want ice cream and cheat meals and he doesn't prescribe it, he's like, you know, this is not. I remember he said at one point in the interview, he's like, these are bodybuilders, not garbage cans. You know, that was my favorite line, because he's like, I see people feed these guys like shit all the time, like just because they want it, not because they need it. And I believe.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'm all good for refeeds and stuff. Psychologically, I think we need sometimes to be satiated, and we need it. We need that time out with, you know, our loved ones, our family, because bodybuilding is fairly restrictive, which is something I wanted to talk about today too, like navigating bodybuilding, especially as a pro, and still having a normal family life, and still having a normal job, and still having, you know, whatever the society, you know, measures us on, like that we need to do outside of bodybuilding, because it's so fucking hard.
So yeah, so that kind of ties in, like, here's my philosophy on cheat meals and refeeds.
Okay.
First of all, if you're a pro bodybuilder, and you want to have refeeds and cheat meals, I think that you have to look at it from a psychological perspective of what that individual is driven by. For myself, I've always been driven by food. When I was 16 years old, I had a really severe eating disorder. I was bulimic for like a year before I started bodybuilding, and bodybuilding was the one thing that like it saved my life. I wrote a little bit of an article about this, but when I think about it, it's like a little bit silly because when I think back, when I first started competing, I would do a show and I'd be completely restrictive that entire show. So restrictive that after the show, I would binge and I would go back to my eating disorder. And I did that actually for many, many years. I even still struggle with it now, just to be completely transparent. Even in 2019, after the New York Pro, I was like sitting on my bathtub after a binge being like, I don't know what to do right now because I've done the damage. I don't want to progress to purging, but at the same time, it's like now I'm so uncomfortable that I'm probably going to end up purging in some way or another, right? So for that kind of like psychology where it's like you're so driven by food, you have to break it down on an individual basis. But maybe someone like myself, or if there's other people that have a similar kind of like food related psychology, it might make more sense to have one cheat meal per week, because then you're getting that release and you're teaching yourself that it's okay to have a burger and fries without going burger and fries, then I have to have ice cream, then I have to have candy bars, then I have to have XYZ until it's too far. And that can sometimes happen if it's like pushed until it's like 16 weeks, no cheat meals. Now you can go have a cheat meal. It's like, okay, I'm going to go have 16 weeks worth of cheat meals now all in one night, but that's not good. So I think it really does depend. I completely understand the refeed, the clean refeeds, because that's what I like to do personally. But again, it's like, what's going to work better for that person's psychology? Are they going to be happy and excited and motivated to have that one cheat meal a week? Are they going to be resentful because you told them to not have any cheat meals when they really want them? And maybe they don't want to be a pro bodybuilder. Maybe they just want to be like big and freaky. So maybe those cheat meals would enhance their life. Maybe that's the opportunity for them to take their significant other out for a date, or maybe even just like cook a meal with their significant other at home, right? Like there's so many kind of like factors that I don't really like being like, oh, you should have a cheat meal every week, or hey, no cheat meals at all. It's kind of like, talk to that person, see what their life is like, see what their ultimate goals are like, see where their psychology is right now, their background, their past, their future, put it together into what makes sense.
I think you hit the nail on the head there, Robin, because it's not something that one size fits all approach. Like it's not cookie cutter type of thing. Everybody will respond to foods, cheat meals differently. There are some people, like you mentioned, that you had eating disorders in the past, right? So if you give someone like binge meals or cheat meals, whatever you want to call them, not binge meals, like these massive refeeds. What do we call them? Like,
well, there's some coaches that even still do that, and it's like it'll be like, oh, here's your high carb day, or your not a high carb day, but here have like a high calorie day. And I've had clients that work with other coaches, not to name names or anything, but there are coaches that do like certain loads, right? And it's like loads day. It's like, oh, you can eat whatever you want, 6,000 calories, eat whatever you want. This is craziness.
Like those Juan Morel calorie days. And I think for someone coming from the perspective of they had an eating disorder, that's, it leads us down a slippery slope, like perhaps binging and purging, or, there's guilt that's associated with it. And there's actually like some really interesting research on people who are in a prolonged calorie deficit. And the research is indicative, and this research was done in the 60s, right? So they knew it back then that and the guys were just cutting their calories in half. I think it was like 2,600. It wasn't even really low calories. But they started doing wacky shit, like eating plants, leaving the study group without permission, and like going out on massive binges. So it's not just bodybuilders. I think we put ourselves in such a restrictive state that it's really difficult, like physiologically, like our bodies need to eat. Like right now, I'm probably, I don't know, 4, 5, 6, 7% body fat, anywhere from, 4 to 7, let's say. And when you're in that state, like I could probably go to all you can eat buffet and eat like 8 or 9 plates, right?
Right.
And then I'd feel guilty. And that leads to, even like, I never had eating disorders, but I'm not going to lie. If I'm doing a show, I'm going to think, oh, fuck, I fucked up.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to take dramatic measures, drastic measures to probably mitigate that. So I think eating disorders do come with bodybuilding. I think it's how you manage it. Like, not everybody gets it. You said it helped you,
Yeah.
but I think it's the way you manage it too. So I'm kind of curious, how did it get you out of eating disorders?
Okay, so yeah, that's where I thought it was like silly, because I remember writing this article when I had thought that I had overcome this eating disorder. I was like, ooh, bodybuilding saved my life. No, I saved my life. I was the one that decided I don't want it anymore. Bodybuilding almost made it worse for me, because it was because of that restrict, and then it's like, okay, now your coach says go have whatever you want, and like go to the Mandarin and eat 18 plates till I'm
Yeah.
I can't breathe. It's like, that's not a good thing at all. So I had to be the one to be like, I don't want this anymore. I want to be in control. And it's like, you just have to be aware of the fact that a lot of people that are in the fitness industry, like a lot of them have some type of addictive mindset. The ones that are competitive for sure have some type of addictive mindset. It's like, we want more, always more progress, more food, more training, more cardio, more everything, right? And so that can be a slippery slope, because even if you don't realize it, if you're not aware of the fact that you have an addictive mindset, you can be given some type of plan from a coach that could be excessive, and you'll just follow it because it's more, right? It's like, this coach gives me more than that coach, so I'm going with this coach. Or if I'm coaching myself, I'll justify it. It's like, I'll take more drugs so I can eat more food, and I'll do more cardio so I can eat more food, or I'll restrict myself more so I can get leaner. It's like, there's a lot of ways you can go with this, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely. And I've been in preps where, just to speak out of personal experience, where I've been in deficits, and I do this kind of like cycling, where I'm cycling foods, like carb cycling, and you rationalize things like, oh shit, I'm eating sushi every 5 days. All you can eat sushi every. Hey, Robin, do you like sushi?
Of course, I love sushi.
Dude, when you come down to Ottawa, talking about eating disorders,
Yeah,
get a binge on some sushi.
exactly.
Um, yeah, I would rationalize like eating tons of sushi. And then I remember going to Bulk Barn. I go to Bulk Barn, and I think I was so knee deep in prep that I didn't even give a fuck anymore. I'd like be rummaging through the bins. I'd probably look like a crazy person. They'd be like, you can't go in the bins. I'm like, fuck you, I'm in prep.
No,
Bulk Barn thought I was nuts.
Yeah.
Then I like, oh, don't worry, I'll pay for shit. I'll pay for shit. I just need to eat right now. But you get into that mindset where you can actually be in a calorie restriction. Like I was in an extreme calorie restriction for 4 days, and then I'd like binge. Not the best strategy, but I've done it.
You know what it is too? It's because it's so, when you have an addictive mindset, when you're left to your own thoughts, you're going to end up giving yourself that justification for whatever the thing that you're addicted to is.
Yeah.
In the end, you will justify it. That's why you need
a coach.
You need some type of external motivation. That's why people that are addicted to drugs or alcohol or whatever, they use a 12-step program. And one of those steps is to like open up and open up to a higher power, because you have to realize that there is some type of power stronger than just your discipline, and also give yourself up to someone else so that you can have that accountability.
It's the I was just going to say, it's the accountability piece. And this is why you see normal people get coaches, get trainers, like personal trainers at Good Life. Yep. And you're like, what the fuck are you doing? You're not making any progress. But they're there for accountability. Right. That's what they're there for. Although some of them don't follow through. But you're right. If you have if you have a personality that's completely addicted, like an addictive personality, and you get a coach, you're probably going to be way better off than coaching yourself, because you can't, especially in prep, you can't tell what's what from what anymore. You're doing stupid shit, and you have a million thoughts, and you're doing contradictory things all the time, right? So you're right. You need like a shaman, a priest, a coach, a
Yeah,
spiritual
you do.
guide, whatever the fuck you need, but you need someone to be there for you to tell you, all right, enough's enough, man. This is the direction you should be going.
Exactly. Yeah.
Agreed.
Someone has to be there for you, like around the clock. And it's like, for myself, I have different people that will do that. Like we were talking about before we jumped on here, is like training with Big Mike. You know, it's like even just training. Like I can train myself. Obviously, I've done it for a decade, but I need someone to be there to be like, hey, this one thing is going to make your training that much better. It's going to be more painful. And that's why it's avoided, right? So I'll subconsciously avoid this one way of doing something that can potentially skyrocket my results. But when you're training on your own, you're not being told to do it that way. So you're going to go back into what's more comfortable. It's always about comfort, right? It's like the human mind seeks comfort. We hate pain. We love comfort. So we just always seek this comfort, right?
And hey, we like what we know, right?
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
tend not to deviate from the path we've been taking because we're comfortable with what we know already. So we
Right.
don't. It's funny. We were talking before this. We had a buddy on. We were just talking three-way. He didn't want to come on the podcast, unfortunately, but he's an older dude. He's been in the game for a while, and we were talking about different training methodologies. You're talking about Robin's video with Mike,
Yep.
and how painful that fucking looks. I guess it's your recent leg workout video, which I missed.
Yep.
But I saw you guys in person doing it at the camp at Pure Muscle 2 weeks
Yep.
ago. Antoine Vaillant was fucking sweating like, man, you guys must have been training hard. But yeah, on that note, I was talking about John Meadows' program, and I remember, and John Meadows, rest in peace, guys. If probably heard the news. But John had an amazing program called the Gauntlet. He had a lot of amazing programs, I'm sure.
Yep.
But I tried out the Gauntlet, and I remember my buddy handing me the program, and I looked at it, and I'm like, "What kind of pussy work is this?" Like I'm doing, comps where I'm benching near 500 at meets. So like he's getting us to push a plate, with these weird pause sets and supersets and giant sets and all types of different methodologies like that Meadows used. And by the end of the night, like by the end of the workout, I remember specifically I was sleeping in a hotel. I couldn't sleep that night, and I had DOMs like right away. And on paper, this workout looked like something I would never do. And I was actually quite reluctant to do it until I did it. And I was like, fuck, I got to buy this program.
I think there's definitely something to be said about like opening up your mind to different training methods, because the one thing that I really love about training with Mike is that I know it's going to be harder than what I would do on my own. And so when I'm going through it, I have to tell myself to make it through. Like when we were doing that leg work, I had to tell myself before, because I think I was like going after Antoine or what. It's like Antoine did his, and I'm like, now I have to do that. So I had to say, I am in control. I'm safe. I'm guided. Let's go, And it's like, I have to, oh, fuck, I'm going to do this, right? And going through it, it's like, I have to go. I have to go. I have to go. When you're on your own, you can do that too, but you don't want to let those people down, right? It's like, you have eyes on you. It's like, I'm going to do more because these people are here. And no matter how internally motivated you are, with that energy, it fuels you.
Yeah, I remember training with Ian Valliere in 2015. He was we would train out of a camp called TNT. You remember that, Robin? TNT,
Yeah.
girls' place.
Yep.
So it was Tony and Ian would train me, but when it was Ian, I remember a leg day. I couldn't even get into the leg press at the end. He's like, "Get in the fucking leg press," and I'm like, "Dude, I can barely move my back."
Mm-hmm.
Like, fuck, I can't tell Ian no because I'm gonna look like a pussy,
Yep.
It's just that it's that extra motivation you get from being around someone that's hardcore. It would be like training with Dorian Yates. Like you hear about people puking. Who was it? Johnny Jackson, I think, puked on his floor.
Yep.
Like you don't want to say no to Dorian Yates to the point where you're physically sick. You'll do it.
Right. Exactly. And one more thing to say about that is, with training, you're going to train in those areas that you're the strongest. You're like, yes, I can crush this type of squat. For me, it was like the box squat. I was like obsessed with getting my box squat. So I was like, I got to get to 5 plates on the box squat. So I got 5 plates in the box squat. Perfect. But then I went and trained with Ben Pekulski, and he was like, okay, well, now we're going to do like this squat where your heels are elevated on a ramp. And I was like, okay, cool. So I'll probably crush like 2 or 3 plates. Yeah, I failed at like 135. So it's different. It's just like, this is uncomfortable for me. This makes me feel like a pussy. So I have to get stronger. It's like, you know, it's like, oh, this is frustrating. And that frustration is actually how your brain learns things, right? Because without that frustration, you don't get those neurotransmitters like that acetylcholine, the dopamine, to be like, I got to get better at this shit.
Yeah, and you rewire, right? That's the funny thing. Like, your brain's plastic. So like, and when I say that, I mean like there's all these pathways in your brain, and it's like the rest of the body, but the brain rewires itself a lot better than the rest of our body. So when we're doing something, we're rewiring our brain, like literally rewiring the way we think. So if you don't like training legs, you know, guilty. That's why I have a terrible like lower body. If I go in with someone who was really good and passionate about legs, then I'd probably start to get more, you know, growth and better motor control, and then rewire everything, and I'd start to grow. But you need to find that partner or that coach that'll motivate you, that'll be there for you for that body group. Because if you do it alone, and I can attest to this, your ego will get in the way, and you'll like train a body group you don't need to train every day because you're fucking good at it. Yep. Exactly what you said.
Not only that, but also because of the fact that neuroplasticity, like you mentioned, that your brain is plastic, that it rewires itself. Yeah. Whenever you give in to an addiction, or whether you like quit on yourself, you're rewiring your brain to be a quitter, to be a loser, to be weak. And that is like, oh, I hate that feeling so bad. And that's the thing that I think about every time I don't do something. It's like, if I don't, like with that 40 minutes posing, it's like, I know I have to do it. I know I'm going to have to do it at some point, and I'm just prolonging the pain because I'm just building it up in my head. The same thing, a lot of people are like, well, how do you go in there like with the anxiety knowing it's going to hurt on leg day? I'm like, because I want to rewire my brain to make it better at going in there and like just doing it. That's what I say. There's only one rule, and it's never fucking quit. Because whenever I see somebody quit, I'm like, you have just confirmed yourself to be a fucking loser. And it's a little bit harsh to say, but it's literally what's happening in your brain, is that your brain is now rewiring itself to be more likely to quit again in the future. And that sucks.
And this is why people don't succeed in diets, in bodybuilding. Like, they just keep reinforcing those negative behaviors, like dieting. Like, you ever see someone that's stuck in a rut that can't lose weight? It's just they keep reinforcing their negative behaviors. Oh, I'm just going to have that ice cream today. And then tomorrow they like have that ice cream again. And before you know it, it's hardwired, man.
But the power and the amazing thing about it is that all you have to do is just rewire it for that discipline. So if it's food, that's my issue, don't eat the food. Every time I don't eat the food, rewiring it. Every time I stick to my plan, I'm rewiring it. And you get better at it. And that's the amazing thing, is after a while of being disciplined, you don't even really need to worry about it anymore, because you've literally just rewired your brain to do those things subconsciously. And it's just like, boom, it just happens.
And this is behavioral conditioning. Like, if you look at BF Skinner, right? And you look at positive reinforcements, you look at different scales of reinforcement and different types of reinforcement. So basically, you're looking at the science of every time you do something good, you get reinforced. Mm-hmm. Every time you do something bad, you get reinforced. So what's reinforcing this behavior? So if you're reinforcing a behavior like, you know, not training that specific squat, you're not going to get better at it, and you're just going to keep doing what you were doing before. But if you reinforce it with, you know, doing the other form of squat and your legs are growing, then it's, you know, you have two things motivating you. You're actually making progress, and you've rewired, and you understand, shit, this is working, man. This is conditioning. So that carrot's dangling in front of you every time you do it, but now you're getting it.
Here's the interesting thing, actually, going off of that, is that what I've started to do lately is training with Mike and things like that. he doesn't really say like, I want you to do this many reps. We just go. And so one of the things that I've kind of figured out lately is if you want to get better at pushing yourself to failure, you're actually more likely to go to failure if you don't pick a rep range. You have that weight and you just go. And if it ends up being like 30 reps, that's fine. Just go to failure. If it ends up being 4 reps, that's fine. Just go to failure. Don't make yourself do a rep range. Just go to failure. And it's actually a really cool feeling, because then it's like, holy shit, that was a lot more than I thought I was gonna get.
Yeah, it's like when I would powerlift with numbers, like if you're objective about it, but you don't think about the numbers, you don't say, oh, today I'm just going to push for 450 or 485. I'm going to push for like 510. If you don't put a limit, it's funny how much more you can do. Because I think part of it is believing something into happening. And I think we self-limit ourselves all the time by believing our we're not capable of doing certain things. Like you said, if you start setting limits, like I'm gonna max out at 12 or 14, you're never gonna do 16.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
You can.
Rob,
one more thing before we go on to the next thing. There's one thing that you can do, and it is a good way to, if you are going to use numbers, like, if you're the type of person who does find that you're more motivated to chase a number in the gym, like a rep range, for example, you can use that rep range to almost trick your mind into getting more. So like what I would do on a leg press, for example, let's say we got 8 plates on there. I'm going to do 20 reps. When you hit 20, you say, I'm going to do 5 more. And you do 5 more, and I'm going to do 5 more. And you do 5 more, and I'm going to do 5 more. And you just keep going until you fucking can't, right? It's like,
it's great.
Yeah, there's always ways, right? But again, it's like, now I'm reinforcing that fact that I can do more. And I think that's really what it's about, is just finding ways to reinforce those habits that you want. Because at the end of the day, bodybuilding is about becoming the person that you want to be. I think that's really what bodybuilding is. It's like, if I can create the discipline of that person I want to be, if I can look like that person I want to be, maybe not even look like the person, but just embody the energy of that person I want to be. If I can have the daily lifestyle of that person I want to be, it's like that is what bodybuilding is. That is the lifestyle of a bodybuilder.
Definitely. It's all about self-improvement. I'm thinking too, I want to ask you, old school bodybuilders would just kind of, some would train by feel, right? Mm-hmm. I've heard stories about like Albert Beckles. You know who Albert Beckles is? You're kind of young.
Yeah, for sure. He was like one of the oldest Olympia competitors.
Yeah, he was like 90 years old. But, but I heard he would just go to the gym and like train whatever the fuck he wanted. And this is according to Dave Palumbo. You'd see him in the gym. He'd, do some sets, get on the phone, then do some more sets. So he didn't really have a plan. He just kind of went by feel. Like, do you ever have those? I know you're at a level where you can't just do that, because how are you going to make progress if you just train? Oh, today's chest day or today's shoulder day, and I'm going to just train whatever I feel. But have you ever had that in your whole career where you just went in and went off the cuff in training?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Actually, when I was training with Ben Beckles, he would say like multiple times, he's like, don't go in there with like a rep range or weight or like
Ben?
an objective thing that you want to accomplish. Go in there with the mindset of exploration. That's what he would say. He would go into the gym with the mindset of exploration. And what he meant by that, after kind of figuring it out, was that what he meant was to go in there and explore your body. Like, go in there and explore the end ranges of a lat pull down. Go in there, like, how lengthened can I get this muscle while being under control with this weight? How shortened can I get this muscle while being under control of this weight? And then exploring how far can I take the pain of the set? How far can I take, like a giant set, like when your lungs are burning, like explore the feeling of like that heart rate going elevated, and then explore the feeling of like calming down after. Like, getting that exploration is actually a really fun thing to introduce into a training program if you have built up a lot of anxiety about like having to be the logbook.
it's funny because yeah, the logbook seems like, I mean, something that Ben would subscribe to because he's so methodical, right? I mean, his training, it's so scientific from what I've seen. I attended one of his seminars here in Ottawa and talked to him for a while, and it seems like, you know, his approach is so methodical, and it would be like a logbook approach. I never thought Ben of all people would be, you know, recommending that we, you know, go by feel. But I did see a video where I think Ben spoke to, like, you know, not every day is going to be a blast day where you're lifting your max. So just get the feel in and feel like you get the contraction on those days. So I guess he does do that, eh?
It's hard to say like this is the way to train. You know, it's like it's such an evolution. And I was talking to a good buddy of mine, and we were talking about like there's those two camps. There's the camp of like you got to feel it, you got to get the angles, you got to get the volume, blah blah blah. And then there's the camp of like you got to lift heavy, you got to progressive overload, and blah blah blah. But how can there be only two camps? And how can there be only two right ways to do things? It's like there's actually like a bajillion different ways to train. And usually it's like a convergence of having the heavy weight, having the feel, exploring what my body is capable of on a given day, exploring like where I can take this set, exploring like the end ranges. Like there's so many different things. But what I really think is valuable is learning that it's an evolution. Learning that after doing something for a decade, for example, like because I've trained now for 12 years, and for probably 10 years of my career, I was focused on a lot of like progressive overload and heavy barbells and things like that. And I realized one day that I was not getting the response from that anymore. I just wasn't. I was actually running into more injuries than
Yeah.
progress. And so
CNS fatigue.
there's two ways you can go with that, right? You can go, I'm just going to continue doing what I know works, or I'm going to go in a different direction. And whether you hire someone to teach you that, or whether you go in with Ben Beckles' approach and just explore something different, you're not going to grow muscle in one workout. So if you take one workout to go and explore something different, it might be the best workout of your life. I don't know, but it might be.
Every individual is different too. Like, I mean, we're all composed of different fiber types. You know, I like Dr. Mike Israetel, watching him talk or speak to, you know, the physiology behind training and the science, because like things like muscle fibers, you know, fast twitch, slow twitch, and like the fibers that are distributed in our body in different areas and how we can utilize those. And you can build on your fast and slow twitch. I didn't know this, but you can actually change the fiber types in your body by certain ways or certain training methodologies.
Yep.
So, I mean, I think we don't really understand the science. So sometimes the best way to go in is just to kind of fuck around and experiment.
Because the science is, it's like this is what's true on paper, and this is what's true in real life.
Yeah, and practice.
And there's a difference there. So I really like to take both, and that's why I think it's important to sometimes have like a trainer that has a presence. Like you want someone to be there that has a presence, so that you're on your best game and you're going in there like I am ready to learn today. I want to learn something, and even if it's like just one small thing, or whether your mind is blown because you just learned 35 different things, that's ultimately how you're going to change. You're going to get the most progress from doing something that you're not used to, and that's going to create the adaptation that you're looking for. So, I mean, you're going to get adaptation from progressive overload. You're going to get adaptation from doing crazy giant sets. You're going to get adaptation to anything that you're putting yourself through that's, you know, uncomfortable enough that sends that signal for whatever response you're looking for, whether it's hypertrophy or fat loss or whatever. But man.
But eventually, I think you're right. Like if you just went straight Dorian Yates power training, like power building, you're going to get injured. I mean, I know this person.
Yes.
I have no triceps, no inner. I have no medial head tricep anymore. So on both arms. So that's what happens when you train like really heavy for like 20 years.
Yeah.
You can't. You need to find different methodologies and give your joints a break. I think that having chronic tendonitis, but I don't think we know having chronic tendonitis is like a sign, that you've got to pay attention to this. And it's not just inflammation. It's not just take your turmeric. It's more than that. It's more than that. So Robin, I just wanted to take a little, break or a pause break because, I forgot, or we forgot to send out a shout out to our sponsor and give out those promo codes. We got a promo code, did we?
We sure did. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, good thinking, actually. I totally forgot about that. But
Ew.
guys, we do have promo codes for Gorilla Wear. So you can go to www.gorillawearcanada.com and use the code BEEF20. That's capital BEEF 20. And we've also got a code for Helix Online. So that's helixonline.com. And it's the same code, BEEF20. So we've got a hookup for you guys for some awesome clothing. We got a hookup for you guys for some awesome SARMs. And the good thing about that, guys, is if you enjoy this content so far, using this code really will help support us and these great companies. So without further ado, in any event, let's get back to it. You wanted to talk a little bit about the stigma around bodybuilding, which I think is really cool, and how the real world looks at bodybuilding. Now, listen, this is something that I want to do because actually I've been thinking about this for a long time, and I kind of get excited about it. I want to go with a camera, like vlog style, and walk around like downtown or wherever and ask people. But I want to have two people. So I want to be there and I want to have like a normal person there. And I want the normal person to go to another normal person and be like, what do you think about this freaky looking person? Without putting any bias on it, like, what do you think about that person right there? And I'll just stand there, and I want to see what their response is. Like, are they intimidated? Are they afraid? Are they in awe? Do they not give a shit? It's like, do they assume certain things? I think it'd be really interesting to ask a lot of like different people that are just going about their day, maybe people that haven't been exposed to bodybuilders before. What do you think about this person?
Yeah, I think that's really interesting if you were to pull people for like research and just kind of figure out what kind of thought processes people go through and what kind of stigmas are associated with bodybuilders, and there's a lot of stigma, but if we're approaching the average person on the street, I mean, I think they're going to be less reluctant to like tell us what the stigmas are and what they think. I think they'll probably tell us that it's not really attractive, I wonder, but
maybe.
but yeah, I don't know, maybe like I think it depends on the look too. Like, would you like to see a guy or female like who's shredded to the bone? Like, nobody fucking wants to see that outside. Like, when you look like an anatomy chart and you have, sure, it's cool. Well, maybe we think it's cool, right? Because we're in it. But you think the average person likes that freaky look where you're all grainy and you have striations and you look like look at my face right now.
Yeah.
You take the muscle away, it looks like I've been smoking a lot of crack.
It's funny though, because if I'm like shredded up and cut, like my face still stays a little fuller, even though my body is like shredded. So I get a lot of like positive comments, I'm getting people like, oh, like you look great, man. Or like a lot of the times I'll look over and they'll just flex at me, like I'll be driving and I'll look over and some guy will just flex at me and I'll just be like, okay, well, I guess we're doing this, and then it makes their day. So I think a lot of people honestly are taken aback by the fact that bodybuilders are walking around and we're actually just normal people who live an abnormal life. But like deep down, we're just humans. We just make different choices with our lives. So I think they look at it like, whoa, that person made a lot of different choices,
From a different side of the token, like a different perspective that's not really stigma related, you get those people who are super appreciative and they're like, man, how do you get to do that? That's awesome. I can't imagine having that type of willpower. You see them in the grocery store and they stop you and they're like, wow, that's amazing. And that's what typically I typically say, listen, man, You know, some people work on muscle cars, some people like to fish. This is what I do. It's nothing extravagant. It's like, it's what I like to do.
Yeah.
Nobody really wants to live this lifestyle. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
But I think people are appreciative in general. I think the stigma, from my perspective, what I've seen is, especially in Canada, the medical community has been brutal with me.
Yeah.
This prep
Agreed.
this year, I had a shoulder issue. You know, I'm going to go out and tell people where I went because I don't give a fuck. I went to the Carleton's a university in Ottawa, the Carleton Sports Clinic, and I was approached by this doctor, and he started accusing me of injecting steroids into my right deltoid, which I had surgery on this arm, by the way. I don't have anything in there. At least I haven't in a while,
Yeah.
probably 3 or 4 years. And he says, well, you have some calcification. Well, I also had fucking calcification in my elbows, you know, from heavy lifting. So he's like, the calcification is from using dirty steroids. Nowhere to lie. That's what he said.
Yeah.
I mean, that kind, and then he refused to treat me that day.
Okay, so that's the one thing that really makes me mad. With
Um,
I, I
Matt,
don't I don't I don't know if it's like this everywhere in the world, but in Canada, it's like you said, it's very brutal. A lot of my clients that yes, they do use performance enhancing drugs, they're going to a doctor so they can do it the healthiest way possible. Now, when they go to a doctor and say, "Hey, doc, listen, I'm doing this cycle of steroids. Can you please monitor my blood work to make sure that I'm healthy while I'm doing
say
it?"
no.
And a doctor says, "No, I'm not willing to help you until you get off the steroids." It's like, don't you realize that these people will not get off the steroids? They're going to do it now without medical assistance. Like, that sucks, man. We need to really change that. And it's not to say that there aren't good doctors. There are, but they are really far and few between. And I'm telling my clients, it's like, hey, listen, if you go to a doctor and he refuses to treat you for steroids, you need to find another one. And they're like, well, how am I going to do that? I'm like, you have to find it.
I say you need to report them. You need to report them
Yeah.
because ethically they can't refuse treatment. Ethically, that is their fucking responsibility. And it makes me angry because listen, if you end up with a heart condition because somebody was negligent, because they had a stigma, and it is stigma, you know, this is the biggest piece that I don't understand. It is stigma because if you had an opioid addiction
Yeah.
from being on painkillers, from I actually work with injured people, and a lot of them get addicted. Not their faults. It happens. Okay. The doctors give them like methadone treatment.
Yeah.
They get prescribed harder drugs or get put in clinics
Yeah.
like RTRT. Like it would be comparable or the equivalent to bodybuilders saying, "Listen, doc, I've been on some hard steroids for a long time. I want to get, you know, I want to clean up a bit. Can we look at TRT or, you know, help me out, at least plan it?" But doing your blood work, I mean,
Yeah.
asking for TRT in Canada is like asking for $1 billion for some reason.
It's like asking for a heroin prescription, you know?
Yeah,
It's like,
it is. That's a better analogy. It's like asking for heroin.
yeah.
But it's ridiculous. I mean, that's ridiculous in itself. But okay, understandably, they don't want to go and give you a replacement therapy dose. So, okay, fair enough. But to refuse someone blood work, that's irresponsible, man. That's irresponsible.
Oh man, it's so bad. I've had clients that said, I went in there and I asked my doctor to write me a requisition for blood work, and he said no. And I'm like, well, tell him to give it to you. Like, you need it.
Yeah,
That's what you're going there for.
I heard people tell me this. I didn't believe it. I didn't believe it when they told me that. I'm like, you're full of shit. Nobody refused your blood, because I talk to a lot of young people, and it seems to happen to them more. Because I'm older, I'll flat out say, listen, I need some blood work. Give them the rationale. They'll be like, okay. But if a 20-year-old goes in, how old are you, Robin? 20, 27?
I'm 28.
28, yeah. If a younger person goes in their mid 20s, they get a lot of shit for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But there's also,
Well,
go ahead.
I've had experiences before I started working with my current doctor. I've had experiences like that, but it really just goes to show you that they're not general practitioners anyways. A lot of them are not well researched, especially in like anabolic steroids. So I think it's a fear that they have, like as if they're going to lose their license for getting involved with it if they give the wrong advice.
It's a
And
liability thing, a professional liability.
yeah, but it's like that's definitely not the right way to go about it, just to refuse treatment altogether. It's like this person needs help from somebody. If you're not willing to do it, they're gonna have to go somewhere else, and that is the sad reality of it. But I'm very fortunate to have a really great doctor he actually stays up to date with research on anabolic steroids and things like that. So it's awesome for me, but it's not so awesome for people that don't have access to that kind of stuff. But I think it will change. I think opening up that discussion starts that change, and you know, there's new people that are going through like they're getting their doctorate and stuff now, and like maybe someone listening, you could be the difference between someone getting great treatment and, you know, whether they're a professional bodybuilder or whether they're just a recreational user. It's still a health matter at the end of the day, right?
I agree. A friend sent me some research. It was a study, and I'm not sure if it was a Canadian study. I think it was an international one, but there really is no standard protocol for someone who wants to get off testosterone. Like if you go into a clinic, there's no protocol that doctors can follow to help you weave off testosterone. And there are addictive, not testosterone, just anabolics in general, because there's addictive properties to it. So say
100%.
someone did want to go off cold, like I'd say you need a multidisciplinary treatment. You need a psychologist, you need a medical doctor, you need an endocrinologist, you need like a team of people to help you come off.
Yeah.
Sounds expensive. You know what it is, Robin? Sounds expensive for Canada because we have free healthcare.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So it seems like a lot of work for nothing, right? But
that's a lot of money that we pay from our tax dollars. And
yeah, exactly. But you know what? You know, honestly, I'm optimistic that times will change and that things will get better in the medical community, because now there is honestly less of a stigma about steroids than there used to be. So I think it's going in the right direction. It's just slow.
Yeah, I think you're right. We need to have conversations. And the problem is people weren't having conversations about, you know, how we can address this. Professionals need to have conversations about, I have that Swiss, the coolest thing, I went to the Mindy O show, right? And I won my classes, and I got to, have you heard of the Swiss seminars?
Oh yeah, I have actually. Yep.
Yeah, so I just got access. That was one of the prizes to all the videos. And they have videos, and I think we'll talk about it next time we have a podcast, but videos about like, one that's really interesting is the neurochemistry of different drugs, like trenbolone and dissociation. I found that very interesting because it affects your neurochemistry. So when you're using a drug like trenbolone, it changes the way you interact with people. And it makes it, I think we were talking about this earlier, it makes sense. But that's aside from stigma. But I'm saying conversations need to be had. Like we're talking about trenbolone on a podcast right now.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's taboo, but this is a conversation that people have to have. Because when you go into the doctor's office and you're in psychosis and you're fucking neurotic, and, you know, you're going into some kind of depression or whatever it may be, you need to get that looked at by a doctor, and they need to understand, oh, this guy's on trenbolone. That might be affecting it. It may exacerbate this condition because there's neurochemicals at play. And we need more research on the neurochemistries of these compounds too. So a lot needs to happen for us to move forward. And bodybuilding, like, I don't think bodybuilding is the only forum that people use anabolic steroids for.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
I mean, let's face it, how many skinny dudes do you know in the gym that just don't train hard enough and use shit?
You know what it is? It's like there's many sports that use anabolic steroids, but bodybuilding is the one that's the most obvious.
Yeah,
And therefore, that's why we have the biggest stigma around it, because
true.
I mean, we know that like cyclists use it, certain Olympic sports use it, maybe all of them. I don't know. Baseball, like it's pretty openly discussed with Jose Canseco's book. It was actually a great book where he was like talking about openly about the rampant use of steroids in baseball. And it's like, well, it seems to be pretty well accepted for them, but less accepted for us. So it's kind of strange how that's unfolding. But again, I do think it's going in the right direction. So
Yeah.
with that being said, I do think that the next episode will be a really interesting one for sure.
Oh man, we have so much to talk about. This is the problem, that we have so much to talk about. I think maybe we should cap it because I've got to pick up. funny talking about medical. I got to pick up the medical system. My buddy had to get gyno surgery in Quebec and pay for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I'll tell you, gyno surgery is not cheap in Quebec.
It's not, but you know what? It's very, very important for bodybuilding. If you have a gynecomastia problem and you don't get surgery, you just don't win shows. So
yeah. Well, I mean, there's a lot of things. I need to get my hernia fixed. I mean, there's so many things aesthetically that can go wrong as a bodybuilder, you know. It's but gyno is definitely one of them for sure. So yeah, we'll cut it. We have so much to talk about, and I have a couple of guests I think I want to bring on. I'm not going to name any names yet, but I think I have some ideas, and I know you might have a couple, and I think it would be good if we all like had conversations, like just round tables and shit.
Definitely, yeah. Let's do it.
Robin and I will brainstorm on the next big guest we're going to get in. We're going to get in Big Ramy. I always joke about getting on Big Ramy on podcasts, because wouldn't that be the fucking funniest thing?
Oh, that would be the best.
Yeah, I mean, just I think his English has gotten better, but can you imagine having a full-blown podcast with him? It would be funny. Yeah, but Ramy's a wicked guy. Okay, so let's cut it. Do you have anything you want to add before next episode?
I'm just gonna say, you know what, guys, with all the serious conversation and all like that, you know, I think it's great to have that serious conversation, but I also think it's really great to just make sure that you're enjoying what you do, love what you do, be grateful for what you get to do, and you know, just leave it at that. And so, with that being said, thank you guys so much for listening. Canadian beef.